Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brian radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Well, we've been doing our show for over 7 years. Every week it's about business, trying to help people with business. So we either will interview a founder or someone who started a business from scratch, or we'll start somebody that has a special skill, Facebook advertising, SEO, how to pick the right location for your operation. Each week we do that, and shows an hour long every Thursday, 1 to 2 p.m. And the show is called Ask Brian. And no, there's no one here named Brian, but there's a reason for that. And one of the reasons is that, uh, well, it was the only domain available when we started. But we've discovered, we discovered that spelling Brian with an E is the best way to spell Brian. And there's a number of reasons why. We actually have a resident expert who appears every show, sometimes as the co-host, sometimes just for the resident E expertise. And Tracy, are you there?
I am. I love being called. It just never gets old for me to be called the resident expert. I mean, I just take it where I can get it, right? So if I'm the expert of the E's, by darn, I'll be the expert of the E's.
And that has nothing to do with ego. Okay, go ahead. With an E.
Oh, it has everything to do with ego, but that's okay. But you know what it actually really has everything to do with is, when it comes to the E's, is our extraordinary engineer.
Thank you, Tracy. You're too kind.
Well, you know what? I am kind, but it's also factual. We would not be able to do our show if we did not have Jen. And plus, this is a perfect episode for me to also point out, it helps me get a little extra estrogen in the lineup, too.
Whoa.
We always need that, yes.
We only hired Jen because she has an E in her name. If she was Jan,
that's true.
And she is exceptional as an engineer. But really, in addition to all of those things, we are the Ask a Brian with the capital E and the Brian, because we interview experts on the show that are just flat out phenomenal. And the experts, how we like to just remind everybody that, being an expert these days is, it's not just about claiming it on social media and saying, hey, I'm an expert, you should work with me. It's really about how much time and energy and research and devotion and all of those things that you have spent in cultivating your expert status. And in doing that, it really takes a good amount of time to really hone your craft and really become that expert. And we look at, the average formula, for example, is they say, if you've worked 10,000 hours in your business category or niche, then you're an expert. And that breaks down to roughly 40 hours a week over the course of 52 weeks, which would take one approximately 5 years if you're tracking on that math. But according to every expert that we've ever had on the Ask Brian show, there's no one that's ever worked 40 hours a week in a startup. It's more like, feels like anyway, 40 hours a day. So we think that, you're at least shortcutting that window of time down to about 3 years. But it's really about the quality of that time spent, not so much as the quantity. But we've got some fantastic experts on today that can really reinforce that theory. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty enthusiastic about
that. Yay.
And also, we're all about the education. So if you didn't have the experts, then they couldn't educate you, our awesome audience that we love so much. And we really want you to spend this time with us and get your learning curve. Like, basically, we want to shortcut your learning curve with all of our experiences and, in a lot of cases, mistakes that we've made along the way, so that we can educate you so that you don't have to make those mistakes. Right, Peter?
Absolutely. I mean, I guess some people do make mistakes.
Well, you don't, of course.
You're not one of those people.
Most everyone else does.
You.
Which leads me to an E we talk about, but we haven't talked about in a while.
I never heard of the word.
I know, I realize that. But most entrepreneurs and most humans actually, do practice empathy, except for our delightful host, Peter, who does not. But that's okay. We
Yay.
still love him
Yay.
anyway.
Yo, you want a yay on that? Wow.
Yeah,
That's
that's so wrong
questionable.
on so many levels. So wrong on so many levels.
Wow. I was going to skip
All
that one.
right.
But, all right.
Well, I'm about out of ease or I'm about out of time. I'm not sure which, but
Well,
Peter,
first of all-
what have I left out?
Well, first of all, besides your favorite, which we'll go into in a second, right? You know, I'm extremely excited.
Woo. Okay, I thought we had bypassed that one when I teed you up with enthusiasm and you didn't respond. I thought we had really
And you mentioned-
escaped
and
the
you- and you mentioned-
screaming mantra.
And you mentioned the word, but you didn't specify that we are catering towards entrepreneurs.
Yes, I felt like that was assumptive, but yes, we are. And yes, we have amazing entrepreneurs on our show today. And I find that to be my signature E. Can I just say it, or do we need to,
No,
to
we need
explain
to start
why
off
it's
with
my
a drum.
signature
You have a
E?
drum roll? You
I
don't have
do,
a-
yeah.
Let's get a drum roll. All right. Grease lightning is
Electrifying. And
Woo!
are we?
I have a couple of fun sound effects here. So
Wow, our engineer has really
What
picked
is
it
that?
up.
buzzer. Yeah, this is good. Oh,
That
you know
means-
what? I need to use that one more often when Peter's running his mouth, Tracy.
that's the entire
I
show.
think that is
The entire
I think
show,
that
we're gonna
needs
hear
to be a regular sound effect going forward.
Yeah, I
then.
agree.
Absolutely.
The buzzer has a nice ring to it.
But
Oh
a
yeah.
buzzer doesn't start with
I
an
love
Oh
E.
my gosh.
Buzzer does not start with an E. All right.
Well, there's an
not,
E in
but
it, so it
it's-
counts. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to all the experts that we have. Thank you, and I will see you next time when I am back with even more ease.
Thank you very much, Trace. Have a great one.
Bye, Trace.
Okay, bye, guys.
So Ben, who also has Ben, is there, and by the way, he's an expert and he has an E in his name. So obviously, Ben, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
You
Yes,
didn't-
I am. How are you?
You didn't run away and say, "What did I get myself into? I got to call my publicist." All right.
No, everything I've just heard is right up my alley, and I strongly support everything about learning and learning to becoming an expert, the 10,000 hours, and growing. So I love everything about it. Happy to talk about it.
Well, great. So first of all, what is the name of your company that you're currently with?
It's Bucher Family Allstate Agency. We're an Allstate agency in Indiana.
And Booker's Buker.
Bucher.
Okay.
It's German. And if I'm in Germany I visit my exchange student, I said, "Look, Bucher on that big building, my family, they must be like really big around here." He goes, "No, Bucher just means books in German. It's a Barnes and Noble, dummy." So it's just Bucher, Bucher.
All right. See, that's exactly what we're talking about. You make a mistake and you learn something from it. So now we know.
Yes.
Can't wait to get to Germany and go
Absolutely.
to the bookstore. All right. So, when did you start? First of all, I want to get a little background because the audience doesn't know you,
Sure.
and I don't know you. I want to get a little background of who you are, what you did in your career before you started this business, and then how you started this business.
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
Absolutely. It's basically three different sections. When the first part of my career, I spent 10 years in New York City doing musical theater, plays, musicals. I
Wow.
even got a degree in musical theater, which I think is a degree specifically for children who didn't get enough attention growing up, because everybody wants to get attention, and I was, of course, one of those. Loved to be on stage, loved to perform. So went to New York, did plays, did musicals, did a lot of serving tables at restaurants, and it was a great time, a great experience for your 20s. I would not want to live in New York City in my 40s. I'm just older, got kids now, but so New York City, then I moved to Georgia to get into, obviously, transition to working at McDonald's. So I was a McDonald's manager for a year in Georgia. I was actually engaged to a woman whose family were part of the McDonald's world. And when the relationship didn't work, I stayed with McDonald's moved back to Ohio, where I'm from, and I was a manager at McDonald's for 4 years before I opened my current business, which is an Allstate insurance agency. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I had it in me. I've been going to conferences for years, John Maxwell conferences. I'd listened to a lot of books about how to be an entrepreneur, and that's where it led me into looking for a business, whether it's a restaurant or McDonald's or a gym. Insurance came about when my cousin Julie called, and she goes, I heard you're looking for a business to start. And I said, yes, I am. I don't know anything about it. She goes, well, Steve, my husband, who, your cousin through marriage, you were at our wedding, he's been with Allstate for 10 years and he really likes it. You should give him a call and find out all about it. I said, that sounds terrible. I don't know a darn thing about insurance. I don't know anything about it. It sounds boring coming from the restaurant world or from the acting world. So I didn't call him. And he calls me back 2 weeks later. He goes, Benny boy, why did you call me? I heard you wanted to start a small business. I said, listen, Steve, I'm not gonna open a State Farm. It's just not for me. And he goes, well, it's not State Farm. It's Allstate. You're just easily confused, but you at least got to get my company right. I said, whatever. He says, come on down, visit me, see how it goes. And I start talking to him, and he's like, you know what? It doesn't matter what the product is, insurance or food or any type of business. It's being a business person and learning things. Doesn't have to be, don't bring insurance in. If you can build relationships, if you can grow and learn about people management skills, learn how to have a team, learn to hire, learn to market, all these things go into anybody who owns a business. Everyone sells a different product or a different service. I was like, okay, let's give this a shot. So we opened up shortly after, and with 0 customers, starting scratch, as some people say. And the thing that got me ahead is just being resourceful, like taking that 10,000 hours that Tracy was talking about and shortening it up. Basically finding mentors, finding coaches. If somebody is really good at something, calling them and asking them, and basically finding out what I need to do to get ahead faster and using resources. I had a lot of coaches, and I do have a lot of coaches over the year that I've paid for, and basically you're paying for their experience. That instead of doing 10,000 hours, maybe you're doing 1,000 hours or half that. But basically, so many people have so much they want to share, and you can learn faster. So hopefully that helps.
Well, a couple things. First of all, one, I want to get a shout out because Tracy was living in Savannah, Georgia for a number of years, so I don't know if your paths crossed. So
That's where I was, yeah.
Well,
Savannah.
So, I'll ask her if she went to the McDonald's. 2, you mentioned something about the fact that, going to the Allstate office was an ability to learn about relationships and management, etc. And I would think that having managed and worked with McDonald's, which is very good at processes and management skills, that you would have picked some of those up at the McDonald's location that you were working at. So
absolutely great. With this actually was a great building block for how I ended up being a business owner. Was I was probably in my first year managing at McDonald's, and I saw this 15-year-old kid making coffee the wrong way. And I didn't handle it the best because I was thinking, you know what, I have to show that I'm a disciplined manager, that I need to say, Kyle, I've showed you how to make coffee 3 times. You're doing this wrong. And it was really the bad approach towards people management. And I learned from another manager there how to create a better culture, how to talk about things in a way that is more people-friendly, how to, as she says, love on your employees. And I was like, that's totally the opposite of everything I've learned about, you need to be, force discipline upon your staff, and you need to make sure they do this and do it, micromanage and make sure everything's done right. Just didn't work. The world had changed, and we started, with our company, like focusing on the culture, focusing on the people, all because of the people I learned from for McDonald's. And so I said, you know what? I have had so many crappy bosses. I'm going to make sure that I'm A, not a crappy boss, B, that I show that I care, and C, create an environment that is supportive, that is caring, that people want to work in. And it's been really great. The culture here is just, the staff love it because there's no negativity, there's no toxicness, there's plenty of support, and you're absolutely right. You learn something at every job. I learned stuff from being an actor too. I learned stuff from waiting tables. I learned some stuff from McDonald's. So you don't realize how much every job you're at, you're learning something that is going to stay with you and help you in the next chapter.
So, and how did you get? So you're starting out a business within the last 10 years, and you're a pretty successful person. We're just trying to understand, how did you grow so quickly?
Great question. Advice from other people. So here's what I did. I started looking at different Facebook groups, and they're for every industry, but there's a lot that are specifically for insurance agents, some specifically for Allstate insurance agents, and you would not believe how many nuggets of gold are just in a Facebook page of people sharing ideas. Hey, I tried this, it didn't work. I tried this, and I'm killing it. So we got so fast by borrowing other successful people's ideas. There are no original ideas. Someone else, if someone's doing something well and they have a proven process, why reinvent the wheel? The fastest way to get where you want to go is to find someone who's already there and ask for directions. I live by that quote. And I do ask a lot of questions from a lot of people, but now people ask me for help, and I gladly give it back because so many people helped me when I didn't have a clue what was going on. So Facebook groups, conferences, if there's any conferences in any of your industry, there's tons of people, especially after COVID, getting face-to-face or belly-to-belly with other people in the industry. You're building relationships. You're understanding things that may have been you didn't know just by being there. So I go to at least 3 or 4 conferences a year. I also am part of 1 or 2 different masterminds. So this could be virtual. This could be in local, meeting at restaurants or coffee once a quarter, once a month, depending on. But a mastermind is a group in a similar industry or similar size businesses, or at least similar goals, where you're sharing ideas and holding each other accountable, where maybe one person talks for 10 minutes, say, here's where I'm at, here's where I'm struggling, and the other 5 people or 10 people say, hey, have you thought about this? That mastermind is coming up with ideas that you've never thought of yourself. So we've got Facebook, conferences, masterminds, coaches. I work with about 3 different coaches off and on throughout the years, just for their expertise and help, and mentors. Someone who's happy to help as a mentor could be free. You could say, hey, would you mind mentoring me? There's also a website called, I think it's score.com or score.org, which is a bunch of retired business owners who give advice for free, which I've used. It's amazing. I'm probably going to join that when I retire. And listening to programs like this show, Ask Brian, learning and constantly being okay with learning. That's most of it.
Well, we have about a minute left, and so one of the questions I have is, what you're talking about, masterminds, coaches, that can get very expensive. I participate in masterminds as well, and thousands and thousands of dollars, and you can do that after you've got something coming. But when you're first starting out, you usually can't afford that.
You're absolutely right. So the masterminds I'm a part of are free. I have not joined a paid mastermind. The Facebook groups are free. The conferences might be anywhere from $250 to $1,000 as a ticket. Those are probably more on the high end. There's also courses that you could start off low. I remember paying $170 a month for a course in the insurance industry that had from start to finish all these processes. That is something that was much more affordable when we started out. And I don't spend crazy amounts of money, but just enough to basically to get what I need. It doesn't have to be a year-long coaching. It could be 2 or 3 coachings. But to start off on the inexpensive way, the Facebook groups, going to at least one conference a year to help grow your mind. The ROI is going to be worth it in itself. And what was the other one?
Well, we got to take a quick break.
Sure.
Listen to the Ask Brian radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brian radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. KHCS is like no other station in the world. Yeah, it is like no other station in the world. Who else has these people? All right. Alex, you said you had some questions to ask Ben. You said I'm hogging the show and then I'm not being empathetic. So go ahead.
Well, you are hogging the show and not being empathetic. And Mr. Ben is really exciting to listen to. I'll tell you, he has the entrepreneur's journey that all of us just, adore hearing about because we know what kind of a struggle it is. And I have to ask Ben that big question of, you got in there, it was day 1 or day minus 30, and you said, man, I signed up to be an Allstate agent, and I don't really know anything about insurance, and I'm going to go sell hard. And what was the first thing that just drove you crazy, or the first 5 challenges you had when you just walked in the door?
Well, absolutely. The first challenge was finding the money to start the business because Allstate required $100,000 capital, and I had zero. I had zero. I did not.
That sounds like a little bit of a challenge.
It is a challenge. And so the whole idea was like delayed, and I was like, do I need to put this off for 5 years or what am I going to do? And I was like, you know what? Let me just ask my family for some help. So my mom loaned me $60,000. My aunt loaned me $20,000. And I had a credit card statement that came out with some of those little paper checks that says, hey, you can cash this and it'll just go right into your credit. So I wrote myself a $20,000 check, which was my limit. And somehow it all added up to $100,000. And it was really risky. But I knew that I didn't have a plan B. Failure was not an option. So I came up with the money and made it work. And then before we opened, the second challenge was hiring. First of all, I'd hired only people that were going to be in the fast food industry before. That was my only hiring experience. This is different. This is like you have to get a license. You have to understand the products. You have to do all this stuff. And I had just learned about the products the month prior. So that was a challenge. We had to push our opening back 2 months because, you needed to at least have 3 staff with you. So I couldn't find anybody. And then once we did start, we didn't have a good process. I had talked with, like I said, I call people all the time. I called other agents in the area and I said, hey, do you have any advice because we're kind of struggling over here? And they said, what's your sales process? And I said, what's a sales process? They're like, you need to get into this course. It's $177 a month. It's hundreds of videos. It'll walk you through everything you could possibly want to know, at least to get you through. And I bought the course, and I've been using it for 6 straight years. It was super helpful. Those are some of the big challenges. And then I had one where the boss, one of the corporate guys, came in after 3 weeks, and they said, hey, looks like you're having a slow start. Looks like you've been open 3 weeks, and you haven't had any sales. And I said, I think we've been doing okay. We've sold at least 20 sales, 25 sales. And he's like, are you closing out at the end of the day? I was like, what does that mean? What's closing out? And he's like, oh, maybe I should show you about that. So I wasn't really good with technology. I wasn't really great with anything. And but I asked for help. And some of those challenges got helped just by asking for help.
Wow. When was that first day where you actually said to yourself, did I make the right move? Was this just throwing money away, and should I go back to McDonald's? Did you have one of those days?
Yes, I had 100 of those days. I had 100 of those days where I go, it was day 1, and then it was day 2, and then it was day 3. For the first 6 months, I was watching this bank account go from $100,000 to $40,000. And without the returns coming back, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is really scary. What have I done with my family's money, and what have I done with my credit? Everything's going to be ruined." I even had another agent who told me, "Like, you are off to a really slow start. And if I were you, I would quit. I would just sell.
Wow.
And I'm very impressionable.
That agent was your competitor at that time as well. So we kind of understood the motivation around there. Yeah.
It could have been. It could have been. Or they were just trying to like, hey, get ahead of it, because a lot of people who start businesses, they don't start well and they don't succeed. It's okay. But I naturally, because I'm so impressionable, I came home from work and I told my wife, we need to close the business. I was crying. I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to fall apart. We need to close business. I need to find something else to do. And I have $100,000 in debt. So the lesson from that is don't be as impressionable. Just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's true. But it was very hard when you're like so much debt and you don't know what you're doing. And then the challenge now is less on finding the money to open or hiring, but we're in a virtual world. Now we have staff that are remote and trying to get people to enjoy that culture and enjoy the work environment. Like, you wouldn't think this, but in an in-office setting, you learn a lot about people, from water cooler talk, talking about their weekend, their day, face-to-face, and that's really missing from the virtual world. So the only way, it's really hard. I mean, that's one nice thing, a lot of nice things about working face-to-face, but if you have people in states across the country, finding that connection. So we've tried to overcome that with being on Zoom for a lot of the day or most of the day and meeting with people and talking about things that maybe aren't work-related, telling jokes, telling dad jokes, doing some celebrations with these people all over the country, trying to replace that water cooler talk with other non-boring and non-work typical conversations. I think you hit on a really good point there. That's a really good point that a lot of people, don't get, is that business is different than it was. It's still a people business because you're still selling to people, but now your employees, the camaraderie that you have when you're all in an office together and you're all rowing in the same direction, that's really hard to achieve. So that's a very, very interesting challenge. But it sounds like you've done well and gotten past a lot of that, and you've seen significant growth, right? What do you count that to? What was a driving factor? If you had to look back and go, well, I grew this business because of, how would you finish that sentence? I grew this business because it scared me to do so. I saw other people doing things, and I was like, you know what? I need to get outside of my comfort zone. And hire more people and know and trust my processes. After a few years, we had listened to enough people, watched enough courses that I was doing things right, had those processes down. I just needed to trust myself, and I didn't want to. I was scared as heck. And finally I said, you know what? All growth takes place outside the comfort zone. And I said, let's do it. Let's hire some more people. Let's spend some more money on marketing instead of just relying on free leads and centers of influence. And I just did it. And it was scary, but I trusted myself. And I think so many people are just afraid to make that leap and move forward that they don't do it.
We're going to take a quick break.
I think that's great advice.
We're going to be taking a quick break to listen to our sponsor. You'll listen to KHS 1220, 98.1 FM. Now our sponsor, Legal Steps.
And the Ask Brian Show wants to say thank you to Legal Steps. That's LEGALSTEPZ with a Z.com. Ben was just talking a few minutes ago about an online course, the sales process that he takes, and he's been doing that for the past 5 or 6 years. This is kind of something similar, an online course that helps you start your own business. You're a young entrepreneur and you kind of don't really know where to start. You're at square one. Well, the folks at Legal Steps are there to help you. You are working with experts. They've got over 30 years of experience and knowledge, so you know that you're in good hands. You're not just kind of out there in the internet abyss finding someone who is a quote-unquote expert. They genuinely know what they're doing, and they genuinely care, because if you are kind of in a situation where you're stuck and you can't figure out how to run your own or start your own business, they will just do it for you. All courses are reviewed by an attorney. Again, you're in good hands. And what I really like, a couple of different things. The online courses, like I said, you can work at your own pace. Obviously, everybody's busy. You have kids, you have dogs, you have spouses, you have a other job that you're trying to maintain, grocery store, you name it. You're busy, so you don't have time to stop down and work on someone else's schedule. So you can work at your own pace with the online courses. You can pause it, you can rewind it, you can take notes as you go along. There's a workbook that you can download. You see Peter on the screen there, kind of helping you along the way. I like to say holding your hand, because if you get stuck, you go, wait a minute, what did he just say? Back it up. And then you can follow along visually with what he is telling you. You really can't go wrong. And the one great thing about Legal Steps right now, if you go to Groupon.com, they will have a great deal. I'm looking at it. We've got the online incorporation course, which is the one that I took. Took me about an hour and a half or so to complete start to finish. Normally, the course is $149, already affordable, but right now they've got a 50% off deal, brings it down to $75. And now there's also a little promo. If you add that on top of there, brings it down to $60. And you can take advantage of that great deal up until tomorrow, March 15th. So go to Groupon.com to check out LegalSteps.com. That's LegalStepz with a Z.com.
Thank you very much, Jen.
You bet.
All right, we're back. Listen to KHS 1220, 98.1 FM, The Ask Brian Show. Ben, you were in the middle of answering something, so I want you to continue.
Oh, it's been 3 minutes. What were we talking about there?
ADD, attention deficit disorder. No,
Yes.
you know,
I have ADDH, which is like ADHD for dyslexics. So sometimes
There
I
you
get
go.
things out of place. I think
we
I
were
was,
talking a little bit about. Good. Go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
I was just going to say one other, challenge that I had in current days is when if you're hiring someone across state lines, like we have someone in New York, you don't realize about the workers' comp. You don't realize all the different insurance things. So once again, you have to learn a whole new process, or else New York State's going to fine you $9,000 for not getting workers' comp for someone who's working in their living room. But you learn as you go. That's all I was going to finish up with.
an expensive lesson.
The lesson is.
Oh, I think. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that's a great lesson as well. And if someone does have a small business, do you have recommendations of what insurance they need right away, or what they should look at?
Absolutely. They should look at getting either a business owner's policy, also referred to as a BOP. That is going to be something that's going to cover a lot of low-risk businesses, like administrative or insurance businesses, things that are like in offices. If you have something that's a little more high risk, you're going to need a general liability policy. I'd recommend finding an insurance, looking online at insurance agencies that sell products for what you're looking for. Look at their reviews, look at their Google reviews, look at things from their website, or ask around. Ask on Facebook, hey guys, I'm starting this type of business. Does anyone have a commercial insurance agent friend or relative or someone they would recommend to me? And you go to and you talk to them. Doesn't mean you have to buy a policy from them, but they should explain to you everything you need specific to your industry. And then just go with whatever feels right. Maybe, and do your own research. What else do I need? Do I use workers' comp? Do I need a commercial liability policy? If I have something that's a little more high risk, find out, hey, what type of insurance does a hairdresser, accountant, logistics business need? The internet is your friend, and it can help you find exactly what you need.
That's fantastic advice. Really great. Really does. I think that, well, Peter, I'm sure you had a couple more questions for Ben. I don't want to hog all of our time here.
Well, so first of all, you were doing business only in Indiana when you started. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So how did you expand to other states, and how did you know when what was the trigger that said, you know what, I need to go beyond Indiana? Was it you had so much sales coming in that you felt that you could just expand it and do the process in other states?
It actually fell in my lap. About 3 years ago, we had purchased a separate Allstate agency, a book of business, as they call it, from an agent who was retiring. And this agent, she had just hired a remote employee out of New York. And when we bought that other agency, I was like, well, I've never had a remote employee before. I'm not just going to let this guy go because we're in Indiana and he's in New York. So we kept him, and then a light bulb went off. I was like, wait a minute. If this guy had been doing insurance for 20 years, this guy has 3-4 times more experience than I do. I'll bet there's other people around the country that are also much more experienced than I am. And I've always hired people that are smarter than me. It just saves so much time that they know what they're doing. It takes less in the training. So I started looking on, and then the pandemic hit, and it was like, okay, so I'm going to look on Indeed for some remote hires, and I found basically going from a 10-mile radius of our office in Indiana had a pool of people. If I went from coast to coast looking for someone who had any insurance experience, I had 100 times more candidates and people looking for work. That if I could just overcome the challenge of them not being in office, which for a lot of people is really hard. They do not hire remote. They just are afraid of it. But it has been huge in finding some of the most talented people in the country that were looking for new jobs. And it doesn't have to be that they were fired or let go somewhere. There's different states in the country that no matter which carrier they're with, there's a freeze on selling insurance, like California, New Jersey, New York, Texas, Florida. They've all had their times when they couldn't really sell. So these people who are selling insurance were just looking for another place to call home. And it really expanded our business when we went coast to coast. And we still hire local too, but they're just better talent countrywide. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brian Radio Show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM with our guest, Ben. So, Ben, really enjoyed having you. And the show isn't over, but people do want to know how to reach you. So how can people connect?
Absolutely. Best way is on Facebook, Ben Bucher Allstate Insurance. Bucher is spelled Bucher. On our website is benbucherinsurance.com, or on Instagram, we're at Ben Bucher Allstate. Also, if you just Google Ben Bucher Allstate, you'll find our Allstate website. But I'm happy to help, happy to talk about other things, non-insurance related, entrepreneur related, and always being a person of value for people who ask. As a quote I stole from John Maxwell, always be a person of value.
Well, that's amazing.
Fantastic.
I won't tell you that I'm a copyright attorney. Okay, so let's go back. The Ask Brian Radio Show also has a podcast. And so this version will be available, and maybe some of you will be listening to this later on. They can listen to it. It's on every single podcast that's out there, from Spotify, Pandora, Apple, wherever you listen to a podcast. We're on all the podcast availability, so it's under Ask Brian, AskBrien. We would ask you, Ben, if when it does come out, it probably take about 10 days to come out. If you want to share it with your people or put it on your website for a little bit, just to let people know, that's fine. You can also, might be beneficial for yourself. So we have about 2.5 minutes left before we have to basically end the show. And so you've provided a lot of information, but you went from pretty much zero in sales and fighting it to, a multi-million-dollar agency. And I'm just trying to figure out, you've told us the challenges, whatever, but can you give us, some things that you've learned? You said you had a couple of pointers that you would like people to know.
Absolutely. Finding the right people is integral. The people we have, 2 managers and 12 other staff who are all really do a lot of the legwork. So finding the right people is huge, and not just hiring anybody off the street, but really being, really going through your core values and hiring people. I got 3 pointers for people that have all been successful for us. EOS is a type of operating system for a company. It's free to run. It's just a way to make sure your company, no matter which industry you're in, is structured and runs things smoothly. If you don't have a company operating system and you're winging it, it's going to be a lot more difficult. So you can read books called Traction or Rocket Fuel. They're great. You can also hire a business coach to help you with it, but you don't need it. Just read those books and you'll be fine. 2, monthly check-ins with your staff. So you always have to, might have to hire that first employee. you need to have at least, if you're not their regular higher up, check in with them half an hour each month just to do high-level things. And I ask 4 questions. What's working? What's not working? What do I need to do to fix things for you if something came up? And 4, can you give me some feedback on how I'm doing and how I can be a better leader for you or our team? A lot of agency owners are they're hard to ask for feedback, and you just need to. And the third thing is dream management. Great book out there called Dream Management about helping staff reach their personal whys and their personal goals so that they achieve their personal dreams at the same time they're hitting their work goals.
Wow, that's very valuable information. And actually, if you have any availability, maybe you can provide the links to those or send that over to me by text,
Sure.
and we'll put it in an article. There will be an article on KHCS, and we'd like to have that. We really appreciate
Absolutely.
we really appreciate your time. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time left. So thank you very much, Ben, for being on the show. Thank you, Alex, for co-hosting. You did a great job. Ben, you did a great job. Jen, you always do a great job. Thank you very much. And that's the show. Over and out. KHS 1220 98.1 FM.